Red Bank Local is here with Holly Berry at her studio in Movement Arts Collective in Red Bank, Tennessee. Holly is running for commission in Red Bank this year, and we wanted to sit down and interview her. So, welcome, Holly. Thanks for having us interview you today.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing all these candidate interviews. We love this kind of civic engagement going on in our community.
Absolutely. Anything we can do to bring visibility. Can you give us a little bit about yourself, your intro, and why you're running for the Board of Commissioners?
Sure. So I'm Holly Berry. I'm currently the mayor of Red Bank, Tennessee. That gets confusing for some people because I'm running for District 1 of the Red Bank Commission, and that's because we don't have a mayor on the ballot. And we can get into that a little bit if you want. But before running for office, I was a full-time artist. I've got some of my art behind me here. I'm trained as an oil painter since I was 9 years old. My current medium is burning images into wood using propane torches, which is how these images are created. And I'm running again for re-election after 2 years because I found the work so rewarding and fulfilling that I'd really love the opportunity to give it another 4 years.
That's great, Holly. Thanks for answering that question. Let's move on to the next question. All right, Holly. So our next question relates to the Red Bank mission. The viewers want to know, how have you in the past as a resident and as past mayor, well, now our current mayor, how have you kind of embodied Red Bank's mission and really tried to make that a part of why you live here and why you work here? Well, work in the studio that we're sitting in.
As a resident, I think the one thing I'm most proud of that I feel like embodies the city's mission and not more than our written mission, but what I think our community is really all about is my work volunteering with the Red Bank Community Food Pantry. I started that as soon as I found out that Red Bank had a food pantry. Was probably about 6 months after they were established. I was really excited to learn our community had that resource because food pantries are one of the most effective and efficient way to get aid directly to the people that need it. And so as soon as I found out it existed, I had to go check it out, and I've been doing intake for the food pantry longer than I've been mayor, over 2 years now, and I think it really keeps everything in perspective for me, not only as a neighbor, but as an elected official. I always have at the forefront of my mind those people in our community that's why we're there. The people that need our help the most. And I think that helps me really reframe everything that we do, all the decisions that we make around the city. I always have those people in mind, not just the people who call me and email me, who have the time and the luxury to be able to engage with our government, but also the people who don't have the bandwidth. And that's been a really important part of my service to the city outside of government, for sure.
And working in the food bank and getting to see the residents face to face and people that you're helping, how does that how do you internalize that? How does that make you feel, and why is that such a big part of why you're how does that help with the Red Bank mission? How does that that holistically, not just the feeling, but working there and so forth, how does that connect you?
Well, one of the reasons my husband and I chose Red Bank was because of the small town feel. I grew up in a small town in Texas, and I really liked being in a place where everybody waves to their neighbors when they go down the street, and people look out for one another, and we have meal trains for one another when we get sick or somebody has a baby. And being a part of that kind of a community is really important to me, and again, why we chose Red Bank, why I found it worthwhile to run for office here, because I want to make this town great for all the people that make it great for one another.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Holly. All right. So the next question pertains to the Red Bank vision. The Red Bank vision states that it will lead our vibrant and proud community with a commitment to excellence, safety, and enhancing our neighborhood character for future generations. We want to hear, what is your primary platform and how does that align with the Red Bank vision?
So really important parts of that vision statement to me, which I really love, we came up with it together as a commission, the 5 of us, and neighborhood and safety really jump out from that statement for me. And one of the big parts of my platform is safety. And for me specifically, that pertains to transportation safety. When I talk to residents that have lived here their entire lives, that go back generations in Red Bank, they miss having a place where they felt safe riding their bikes, being able to go anywhere in town they wanted to go as children and feel safe doing so. And I feel a shift in Red Bank that we are ready to prioritize the safety of our residents on our roads rather than the speed of pass-through traffic for people that don't live here. And so that's a big priority for me going into the next 4 years. If I have the privilege of being reelected, is I would like to see our transportation network be reconsidered and designed to serve those who live here and to keep our residents safe and help our residents get from priority destinations and encourage them to be able to be active and feel safe doing so. So that's a huge part of my goals for the next 4 years. And in addition to that, I think an important part of a neighborhood is having a community gathering place. And another thing I'm hearing overwhelmingly from residents since my first campaign 2 years ago is that we would really like to have better access to a library. You know, it's called a public library for a reason. Everybody's supposed to have access to it regardless of means or ability. And right now we have to pay $50 to have access to the Chattanooga library, which my husband and I happily pay, but for some people it can be a barrier. But even more so than the money is getting there, you know, especially if you're talking about children, people who are unable to drive or too young to drive, who would have to rely on a parent or guardian to get them to the library downtown or to Hickson, which are our nearest branches. A lot of people have a hunger for our own library branch here in Red Bank, and having our new city manager on board, who just started last October, who actually established a library from the ground up where he came from, really sparked inspiration for me that this is something that we could really do in Red Bank if we make it a priority. And I hear from so many people that it is a priority for them, and they do think it's worth, you know, putting that at the top of the agenda, getting a library in our town. And I think that will go a long way towards enhancing our neighborhood character and helping bring neighbors together and give them access to the resources that they need.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that with us, Holly. All right, so we have some follow-up questions more specific to topics that are top of mind for the residents in Red Bank. And one of the top questions that is top of mind question here is commercial development. So what is your position on commercial development within Red Bank?
So commercial development is incredibly important in our city because over a third of our revenue comes from sales tax as opposed to property tax. And that is a benefit that we have over some other cities in our area that rely more heavily on property taxes. And the stronger we can make our businesses, the more money that we can keep here in Red Bank, not only for our residents to spend, but attracting people from outside of Red Bank to come spend money here, the more services that we can provide to our residents without having to raise property taxes. So that all makes it a really high priority. At the same time, we have to find a balance. So we don't want commercial development for the sake of commercial development. I think the chapter is closing in Red Bank on, you know, rolling out the red carpet for big business, chain, national corporate type of businesses where all of the money spent there, the vast majority gets funneled straight up to the CEO who lives somewhere else. I think people really have a hunger for more small, locally owned, independent businesses. And that's what we've seen in the past 2 years is more and more businesses opening up that are owned by Red Bank residents, like Clever Ale House and Balico and Bread and Butter. And that's what we want to see, and that's what we're starting to get, which is really exciting. And now I forgot what I was going to say next.
No worries.
What's the other part? Oh yeah, okay. Part of an important factor of commercial development in our city is that we have a very limited commercial corridor. So in Red Bank, our only commercial space is right along Dayton Boulevard. Pretty much everything off of Dayton Boulevard with a small section of Morrison Springs Road and Ashland Terrace being the exception. Everything else is residential. So in order to have more businesses, we need to encourage and promote and preserve commercial space on Dayton Boulevard, and that is something I have endeavored to do throughout my term. We have had proposals for residential development along Dayton Boulevard, and whenever possible, I have tried to encourage that there be a commercial component included anytime there is development on Dayton Boulevard, and not to encourage rezonings of Dayton Boulevard property away from commercial zoning, because if we only have 6.4 square miles in the whole city, and probably if I had to guess 2 square miles of that is zoned commercial along Dayton Boulevard, then we gotta guard that with our lives,
Right.
in order to have places for businesses to go, because that is a challenge for us. So that's another one of my priorities in terms of commercial development.
Well, we appreciate you answering that. Thank you so much, Holly. All right. One of the other topics that Red Bank residents are interested in and want to know where you stand with Parks and Rec. Can you fill us in a little bit on where you stand?
Sure. So first of all, I'm really excited about our unanimously adopted commission goal of a 10-minute walk to a park initiative. Right now, not quite a quarter of Red Bank residents have access to a park within a 10-minute walk of their home. So I'm really excited that that became a top priority for our commission going forward, is getting access to all residents to a park within 10-minute walk, especially for our northern residents, because there's no public green space north of Kids Corner Park on Unaka, which is just across the street from the Food City. From that point north all the way to Gad Road, which is our city limits, there's nothing. And so that's a huge need in our city. I look forward to finding ways to address that need in the future. In addition to that, one of the first motions that I made after being sworn in as mayor was to suspend the RFP, that's a request for proposals, that had been issued on the middle school property. That's a big topic right now. And, the city was considering at that time selling it to private developers for mixed-use residential commercial, which is not necessarily bad, but there had very little guidelines in that RFP about preserving any green space for the public, or what the ratio we wanted of residential to commercial, what kind of commercial developments we wanted to see there, Energy Star requirements, building phase requirements. It was basically a one-page document, and I think we really needed to have, for something that important, a lot more thought and detail put into something like that. So I motioned to suspend it, especially so that we could have an opportunity to gather more public input on that space, since it's owned by the people of Red Bank, and see what they wanted to have done with it. And that motion failed, but in the intervening 2 years, we did end up receiving 3 RFPs on that property, which were basically subdivision developments. And that's the last thing most people I talked to wanted to see there is they either want to see it stay a park, or they want to see, some mixed use development, but nobody I've heard said we need another single family subdivision there. So again, talking about, preserving potential commercial space there, preserving parks and green space. Part of the 10-minute walk to the park initiative is going to allow us to really expand into types of parks that we've never had in Red Bank. So in Red Bank, we do really well in terms of special use parks like ball fields, tennis courts. Now pickleball courts are super popular. We have a dog park, we have playgrounds. But something that we lack is something called a signature park. And that would be like the equivalent of Coolidge Park in Chattanooga, where it's an icon, it's a landmark. People come from outside to come see it. When you're there, where you are. It's specific for the place it's in. We don't want Coolidge Park in Red Bank. We want Red Bank's version of Coolidge Park that's uniquely us. And the middle school property presents a unique opportunity to create something like that. I've heard a lot of people say, when we lost the Jubilee grounds that we used to have when the elementary school used to be where the Food City is, that large open community gathering space that we used to have was never replaced. And they have a vision, a lot of people have a vision for recreating that kind of community gathering place and community hub at the middle school property with perhaps an amphitheater where we could have movies in the park and live performances, concerts, art festivals, farmers markets, all these kinds of events in a conducive space, as well as walking trails. And people have also mentioned other possibilities we could explore, like a food truck park. So many options, and with 12 acres you can really do quite a bit with that space. And I'm excited to see going forward in the next couple years where that public input process takes us and what we as a community decide to do with that space and how it's going to shape our community going forward. Another couple types of parks that Red Bank hasn't seen yet is linear parks, like a greenway or a blueway. And I think we have some really good opportunities for greenways in our city between the railroads and Stringer's Branch, and pocket parks. And neighborhood pocket parks are probably, between linear parks and pocket parks, will be the best solution for getting park access to those northern residents that we were talking about. So excited to see how our park inventory could diversify and expand in the coming years.
Thanks, Holly, for expanding on Parks and Rec. We'll go on to the next question. All right, so the next topic is, what is your position on multimodal transportation in Red Bank?
So multimodal transportation, that means being able to walk, bike, roll, drive, any form of transportation, anything walking or rolling, right? Whether that's a skateboard or a bicycle or a wheelchair or a scooter, multimodal. You can get around any way you choose to get around. That's the basis of multimodal. That's something big that I ran on back in 2020. I want to see our sidewalk networks expanded. I think something we have support for, all 5 commissioners, I've heard them say, we want to see sidewalks on both sides of Dayton Boulevard, all the way from the tunnel on the south end to Gad Road on the north end. And that's something I think that we can accomplish in the coming years, if we make it a priority. And we're starting to expand that network. We have new sidewalks on Ashland Terrace. We've got new sidewalks on Dayton Boulevard, north of Newberry. But we can still definitely have lots of room for improvement. Again, especially on the north end. Shout out to my north residents. We see you. We know that you want to be able to walk and bike just as much as our southern residents. And we are working towards that goal. And it's really important that people be able to get around safely however they choose to get around. And we need to think about how to make our roads work for all users and not just cars. They're going to work for cars too. You can still drive, making it safe for people to bike. Not only does it not make it harder for you to drive, it actually, designing good multimodal transportation networks makes it safer for car drivers too. So everybody wins in this scenario. And that's something I'm super passionate about bringing. It's the reason I applied for our Active People Healthy Nations Champion Institute instruction. And I was really proud and honored to be the only leader in Tennessee selected for that institute. And I just began my instruction this week, and it's going to go on. It's for about 4 or 5 months until I think March or May of next year. And starting with instruction and advocacy, and then moving all the way into next year, assuming I'm reelected, then it'll end in a capstone project, which would be either a demonstration project or possibly even a complete streets ordinance, which is something I really, really look forward to doing. But yeah, multimodal transportation, I think not only am I all in, but I think the people of Red Bank are all in, and our commissioners too.
That's great. Thanks, Holly. All right, Holly. So we have one last question for you, and we'd like to know what your position is on improving Red Bank's digital space or digital capacity.
Excellent. So it's really hard for me to pick a favorite one of our 5 commission goals, but create adequate digital capacity is the one that I personally elected to champion, along with our police chief, Dan Seymour. He's my staff champion that I work with, and we're actually looking our update for that goal is going to be at the next commission meeting, the first one in October. But when I first was running for office, I thought that where the city needed to improve its digital capacity was in its outreach to residents. And that is true. We do need to improve that. And we have been improving that in small steps, like we created the city's first official Facebook page where we try to post updates, and we're working on improving that engagement day by day. And our city now has an email newsletter that you can subscribe to. We just hired our first public relations specialist, who's also our assistant city recorder, and she just started last week, and she's going to be tasked with keeping up with the city's social media presence and newsletter and website, and very much looking forward to having her on board and seeing how that improves our outreach to residents. We have been looking for 2 years now at updating this and modernizing the city website and improving, resident interaction with that website, being able to find information easily, having the information that residents want to find available on the website, being able to submit electronic requests for things like brush pickup and bulk trash pickup and business permits. And that is starting to be rolled out. But what I learned after being elected is that we don't just need technology to be able to connect with our residents externally to the city. We actually needed a huge amount of digital improvements internally to the city. And that's why we haven't seen as much kind of pomp and fanfare in terms of rolling out digital upgrades externally, is because the city's been working really hard for the past 2 years on internal technology improvements. So we budgeted for, in the last budget, our first IT professional that we've ever had. Our dear police chief has been tasked, dual-hatted, as being our CIO for the past few years, and he is doing a great job, but we would love for him to be able to focus on what his true job description and what he does best, which is being our police chief. And so applications close October 7th for our new IT professional. So I'm looking forward to that individual starting very soon and seeing where that takes us in terms of updates. We've also budgeted internally for a software for the Public Works Department called iWork, IWORQ, and that is what is allowing the Public Works Department to now have those online permit applications for building permits, business permits. This Christmas parade, you should be able to apply online to be a vendor, which we're super excited about. That was a big goal of mine, and a big part of the feedback that we got. Our Christmas parade that we relaunched December 2021 was a huge hit. We have massive attendance. People loved it, but one of the big pieces of feedback that we got, especially from vendors, is that they would like to be able to apply online, and I think we're going to be there this year for that. So we're making steps in the right direction. And I think with this new staff capacity that we're adding, we're going to start to see that progress accelerate.
That's really great. Well, Hollie, I really appreciate you answering all of our questions. I know the viewers on Red Bank Local and the people that follow the page are really intrigued to hear all of the responses from all the candidates, but we really appreciate your time and sitting down with us and giving us your take on these different questions that we asked you today.
And thank you for doing this. Being engaged in local government, your local government, down ballot offices like these often get overlooked, but they really can make the biggest difference on your day-to-day life, and your vote counts the most. I mean, we have local races that are decided by 27 votes, 14 votes, 30 votes. Your vote counts. So I just want to encourage everybody to get out this November. November 8th is election day. Early voting starts in less than a month on October 19th. And early voting is very convenient. They're open on Saturdays. So definitely get out there, vote, and vote all the way down the ballot.
Awesome. Thanks, Hollie, so much.